Welcome in, fantasy football owners. Exciting NFL Week 1 in the books, kinda. I'm recording here before the Monday Night Football game, so don't know the results of the Denver Broncos versus Seattle Seahawks, but I will only say that I assumed the Denver Broncos kicked the Seahawks' ass, let Russ cook, and it was a hell of a revenge game. But that's not why we're here to talk. We're here to help you build your fantasy football roster, help you navigate the waiver wire, and I think we should just get into it. A lot of big injuries in Week 1, unfortunately. Let's get into the quarterback position. The headliner is going to be Dak Prescott, who had a hand injury in the opening game against the Tampa Bay Bucks. He is going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. And this injury usually takes about 2 to 4 weeks to really get into your previous playing shape. So expect Dak Prescott to have a few down weeks as he comes back. The first name to replace him is going to be Carson Wentz. I think this is a great short-term and long-term answer because in week 2, Carson Wentz goes against the Detroit Lions. The Lions got lit up by Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles in week 1. Speaking of lighting up, Carson Wentz put up 4 touchdowns in week 1, and people love to clown on Carson. I get it. The punchlines are easy. 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, was the QB 13 in 2021. There's no reason this guy should be 3% owned in fantasy. This is a guy that you immediately have to add on your roster, especially if you lost Dak Prescott, because the floor isn't as steep as you think. The ceiling is a potential QB1. Add Carson Wentz. He has great chemistry with his wide receivers. He's in a situation where they seemingly believe in him. I mean, they traded third-round pick that no one expected they were going to trade to pick him up. Not a high-priority fab ad, but one that I think that you should at least throw a few dollars at, especially if you lost Prescott. Another one that is more of a short-term play, not one that I would recommend in the same ilk of Carson Wentz, is going to be Jared Goff. Jared Goff goes against the Washington Commanders, and the Commanders wore the last ranked defense against the fantasy quarterback position last year. They still don't have Chase Young, which means their pass rush is a little subpar at the moment. And the Lions do have an excellent offensive line. I think that the ending of that Philadelphia game showed me that Jared Goff is not afraid to wing it out. And they're going to be in a lot of negative game scripts this year. Jared Goff is not a good quarterback, but he is one that is serviceable enough to win you some games in fantasy football. So I suggest you give Jared Goff a look, as he could potentially be a streaming option for week 2. Another one, I didn't expect this one to be on my recommendations as not someone that immediately came to mind. But if you look at the schedule, especially you look at the schedule while Dak is going to be out with this injury, one that does have some favorable matchups coming up. That is going to be Mac Jones. Mac Attack is 17% owned. Some of his upcoming games, Baltimore, Chicago, Indianapolis, Detroit, the Jets, all 5 of those teams were bottom half of the league against fantasy quarterbacks last year. Detroit, the Jets, and Indianapolis were all in the bottom 15 in week 1. Mac Jones has the upside to potentially win these games, if not an unexciting option, just given the low volume of the Patriots passing offense. So looking at Mac Jones, if you're desperate, I would say in a deeper league more than in a league that's 10 to 12 teams. If you really want to go with the upside play, I recommend someone that came from Mac Jones' draft class. That's going to be Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is going to be 47% owned. T-Law has 2 games against the Colts, 1 against Houston, and 1 against the Chargers. All, again, bottom half of the league last year. All have improved this year. But if you believe that Trevor Lawrence is that guy of that Andrew Luck prospect, that Peyton Manning prospect, then you have to believe that under Doug Peterson and a better sense of direction, Trevor Lawrence should be bound for a breakout. Is it going to be this year? Week 1 didn't suggest great growth, but I think it was him moving in a positive direction. So I would look at T-Law. I would consider him. Trevor Lawrence, not a bad play moving forward. He has some favorable matchups coming up. And like Mac Jones, like Carson Wentz, doesn't have a bye week in the time that Dak Prescott would be estimated to miss games, according to his original diagnosis. Let's shift on to the running back position. Headliners, Elijah Mitchell, Najee Harris. Starting first with Elijah Mitchell. So obviously you see the Niners helmet on this desk. This one hurts. Eli Mitchell is going to miss 2 months with a sprained MCL. So let's look internally. Let's see what the Niners have. Jeff Wilson Jr. is going to get the first nod, going to get the first opportunity to get touches in this backfield. But I'm not excited about Jeff Wilson Jr. He hasn't really looked explosive the last 2 years. And I think that's going to show when you look at guys who, in the preseason at least, looked way more dynamic than Jeff Wilson Jr. That's going to be Ty Davis Price. That is going to be Jordan Mason. These are guys that I highly recommend fantasy owners consider, especially if you're in a 14 to 16 team league. Ty Davis Price was a 3rd round pick out of LSU. Jordan Mason, undrafted rookie out of Georgia Tech. But if you look at the preseason, Ty Davis-Price had a few solid runs. Jordan Mason had a lot more of them. Jordan Mason looked like the more explosive back and earned his role because the Niners cut Trey Sermon in favor of Mason. They let JaMychal Hasty go in favor of Jordan Mason, averaging over 5 yards a carry in the preseason. I think this is a guy that people should turn their attention to. Jordan Mason's going to be my first recommendation. But if you miss on him, Ty Davis-Price, Jeff Wilson Jr. are all going to have a role. This is going to be a more committee backfield for the first couple weeks. But mark my words, I think that Mason is going to be the guy you're going to want to own in San Francisco. Kyle Shanahan offense for the win. Pick up Mason, pick up Price, pick up Jeff Wilson Jr. All three of these guys have an opportunity in a good run-centric offense. Okay, let's move on to Najee. So Najee in the preseason, and we knew we were right to make a video on this. You can check it out. I got this linked right here. Was dealing with a Linz-Frank injury, and it seems as though that injury may have lingered into the opening game. He missed some time against the Cincinnati Bengals. Positive report from Adam Schefter today, though. Quote, test today on Najee's foot injury came back negative, and there is a belief that, according to a source, he should be good to go Sunday versus the Patriots. Was that an Adam Schefter impersonation? Probably not. Probably not a great one. But the point is that Najee should be out there against the Patriots. But if he's not, Jaylen Warren is going to be the backup in Pittsburgh. And even regardless of this diagnosis, I think Warren is worth a pickup because if we're already talking after week one, that Najee had a scare about this Linz-Frank, then his backup has value. His handcuff has value. If you have a roster spot to spare it on Jaylen Warren because Najee's health is going to be a question mark throughout this year, especially with the diminished Steelers offensive line. A Steelers team in general that got a little bit worse after a TJ Watt injury. I think that Jaylen Warren is well worth the stash if Najee Harris is to miss any length of time. So pick him up. Do it. Do yourself a favor. Pick up Jaylen Warren. Some other guys on my list. How about James Robinson? Less than 60% owned, had 2 touchdowns. I don't like saying it as a Travis Etienne owner, but James Robinson is going to continue to be a thing in Jacksonville. He had double-digit touches. I think Doug Peterson is going to use a committee approach between him and Etienne. Both are going to have their moments where they look better than the other. But James Robinson at least has running back 3 upside. Hell, even running back 2 upside should he get the majority of snaps. So pick him up. There's no reason he should be less than 60% owned. James Robinson needs to be on all rosters. Rex Burkhead, not a sexy one. One that I detest that I have to even say because I believe in Dameon Pierce. But the snap count disagrees with me because Rex Burkhead had 71% of the snaps in the Houston Texans week 1 game against the Colts. 71% of snaps. You can't ignore that. That clearly shows that the coaching staff still loves him, still believes in him, still believes he has a role in this offense. Even if Pierce starts to see more work, Rex Burkhead is going to be a thing. He's been a third down back for the entirety of his career. I think he's going to still touches away from Pierce regardless. Pierce will not be a 3-down back this year. Pierce has the more upside. I believe in Pierce, the talent. Hopefully you get some touchdown production to help make up for all the people that drafted him higher in drafts. But unfortunately, Burkhead, this says a lot. This is something that you can't ignore, similar to Akers and Henderson. You have to look at what Burkhead is doing. I don't see him as an upside play. I don't even see him as a starter. But clearly the Texans are going to use him. So be prepared to see Rex Burkhead on waiver wire additions, especially in deeper leagues. Another one, Isaiah Pacheco, 31% owned. Now, Isaiah Pacheco was someone that was drafted with the expectation that CEH wouldn't be that good this year, would fall off this year, may even overtake CEH on the roster. Not happening. CEH had a couple touchdowns in week 1. Isaiah Pacheco had garbage time. Pacheco, though, still does have the upside of CEH missed time because throughout CEH's career in the NFL, he has missed time. So if you see Pacheco on your waiver wire, if you see him out there in a deep league, pick up Isaiah Pacheco, worth the stash, similar to what I'm said about Jaylen Warren. Let's talk wide receiver. Keenan Allen, why? Why do you spurn me? Why do you have a hamstring injury and are guaranteed to miss week 2? There's no way in hell he suits up. I'm going to make that proclamation today, regardless of what the tests come back and say. Keenan Allen going to be out week 2. So you got to replace him internally. Look at the Chargers. Okay, Jordan Palmer, 3 targets. DeAndre Carter, 4 targets. Don't love either of these guys. Don't think either of these guys are Keenan Allen replacements. They're not going to take up the same amount of volume. I think most of the work is going to go Mike Williams. Most of the work is going to go Austin Eckler. but there is going to be some upside in Jordan Palmer and DeAndre Carter on a week-to-week basis. I would recommend adding them, if not just for a speculative ad. Don't throw a lot of fab dollars at them, but they are going to be very touchdown dependent, week-to-week inconsistencies. I don't see them being wide receiver ones. I don't see them being even wide receiver threes, but I do see them as people that you should consider on your waiver wire priorities, just because Keenan Allen is going to be missing the offense. That's going to be about 10 targets that the Chargers need to replace on a given basis. So Palmer, Carter, put them on your radar. Next on this list is going to be, I mentioned the Commanders. Take command of your team and add some Commanders wide receivers, as Carson Wentz against the Detroit Lions is going to have a good day. I'm going to put in the books, Carson Wentz is going to have an upside day against the Detroit Lions, which means his wide receivers, Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel, who are widely available, need to be owned. Curtis Samuel, big free agent acquisition for the Commanders last year, had 8 targets in week 1. On volume alone, that is worth an ad. Jahan Dotson, upside rookie play, needs to be added. Both these guys, I think, will shine a little bit against the Detroit secondary. So pick them up now, because after week 2, they're going to be hard to acquire. My last recommendation at wide receiver is going to be Mecole Hardman. Mecole is still on a lot of waiver wires out there. And while I don't love the talent, I don't love that he's going to be inconsistent play. He is in this Chiefs offense. In week 1, the touchdowns went to the wrong receivers. Mecole Hardman was one of them that came down with a touchdown, came down with a tutty. So you have to add him because he's in this high volume Chiefs offense. And I don't know if it's still going to be Marquez, Sky, Juju, but Mecole still has opportunity to shine. He still has touchdown upside. So he needs to be added just in case. And if there's an injury to one of those guys, expect Mecole's snap count to go up. Okay, let's get into tight ends. Headliner, George Kittle, groin, still hurt, missed week 1, couple missed practices. I think this is going to be a multi-week injury. Again, Niners loyalty, George Kittle being out really sucks. But you don't care about that. You don't care about my misery as a 49ers fan. You care about what's going to help your fantasy football team. So let me help you out, you heathens. OJ Howard, 2 touchdowns in week 1 against the Colts. I think that he's someone that needs to be added. I don't know how good of a performance he's going to have in week 2 against the Broncos, but OJ Howard is still a first-round talent. I'm surprised the Bills couldn't find a role for him. I think that OJ Howard is someone that you need to pick up. Not going to be a ton of fab, maybe like 5 to 10% of your fab used on OJ Howard. But if you have a fringe tight end 1 on your team, if you have some guys that you're unsure about, or if you're dealing with an injury situation like George Kittle, pick up OJ Howard. I think that 3 to 4 targets is enough for a talent like OJ Howard to at least end up in the end zone. I don't think Davis Mills is going to underutilize him. I think that Davis Mills is a guy that can recognize talent. He's like Brandon Cooks, talented guy. Let me get him the ball. OJ Howard, talented guy. Let me get him the ball. So I think Davis Mills is going to be someone that utilizes OJ Howard down stretch. So maybe not necessarily in week 2, but he's worth it because the tight end position is such a farce of a position at this point behind the truly elite guys. Evan Ingram, now with the Jacksonville Jaguars, he has a premium matchup against the same Colts that OJ Howard played in week 1. As long as Shaq Leonard is out, I believe that the tight end position will feast in matchups against the Colts. So I think Evan Ingram has an opportunity to end up in the end zone against this Colts defense. Pick him up, well worth it. 20% owned. This is an upside play. This is potential streamer more than anything. One that I think will help you get the victory. So Evan Ingram, sign him up to your roster. And the last recommendation, so last year's worst defense against fantasy tight ends was the Philadelphia Eagles. Next Monday night, the Minnesota Vikings will play those Eagles, which means Irv Smith Jr., who is 6.4% owned, well worth the ad. A lot of the work in week 1 obviously went to Justin Jefferson. I think that Irv Smith has an opportunity against this Eagles secondary to get you a score, get you some targets. So you probably heard me say a lot during this video, worth the ad. Irv Smith Jr. against the secondary, worth the ad. Pick him up, guys. Anyway, guys, that does it for the tight end position. That does it for this waiver video, but that doesn't do it for this fantasy football season unless you're one to just give up after 0-1 start. I know I'm not. So leave comments below for me. Any fantasy football question, any waiver wire question. How much fab do you need to use? Should I make that trade? Should I pick up this guy, that guy, or start or sit another? I want to know all your fantasy questions. So leave them for me in the comment section. Leave a like on this video because that helps the algorithm. But you know what helps the algorithm more? Hitting that subscribe button. And we ask you, come on, guys. We're just here to give you some support. So hit that subscribe button. Follow us on all our social medias, mine at Juju Talk Sports, at Slumpbuster Podcast, where we'll post as much content to, again, help you win your league, get you through this season, and overall just have fun doing it. So stay safe, happy, and healthy. From Juju Talk Sports, I will see you next time.